Hey everyone, welcome back to our taboo busting alphabetical journey. We're going to talk about quality of life today. And we mentioned this last time when we were talking about patterns, that really we often fall into patterns that we think are improving our own quality of life, but really when we challenge or become aware of those patterns, we can often find that they do us more harm than good, and that really the things we get used to might not be leading us down the path we want to be on. So before I start diving into any of those paths, I want to put myself on a collision course with a greeting to welcome Sylvia to the show as always.
Hello, my friend. Good to see you. And I feel like we should celebrate a change in your life that has added, I think, extra quality to it. So I'll turn it to you to share with the audience what that change is on your end.
Absolutely. So I have actually moved to Sweden, which has been on my to-do list for a long time. Actually, speaking of quality of life, Sweden tends to rank quite highly on a global level in that. I'm not at my own home right now. I'm actually at a friend's place, but I'm sure future episodes will showcase plenty of where I'm now living. But it feels really good to be over here, and actually, I'd be more than happy to dive in actually where that reflects on quality of life from a personal perspective, where work culture is something that has always been sort of an undercurrent through this series. You know, we started out with a subtitle that admittedly we don't really call out that often, which is, workplace and beyond. And if we skip the beyond for a second and just look at workplace, there's this tendency, and I've found it personally when working in the UK and US, that there's this prevalent mindset of workaholic Catholicism really being the norm. You
Hmm.
know, if you go on vacation, you better pick up a call. If you are awake, you better pick up that call. If you're not awake, your phone better be on vibrate so you can pick it up and pick up that call. Um, these almost unspoken competitions of who can hustle the most, who can grind. A good life is only a good life if you get to VP level or C level or director level, and it's these patterns that we get into in order to try to get to a quality of life that's been determined by others. And it's really easy to fall into that when everything around you is telling you that. But one of the things I found when I started talking to the people that I'm now working with over here was a completely different and, in my opinion, healthier perspective on that quality of life. And I could talk about that for a very long time, but I'll leave it at that distinction, just to, I guess, step into one more thing before I hand the mic over, which is, I guess, for me, I had to reevaluate a little bit what I was looking for in order to bring me the quality life that I was going after. One of the things I found was when I fell into the trap of, I have to always be working. Every hour where I'm not working is potential lost revenue and, lost opportunity and all that. When I got into that mindset, I started to lose more and more of the things that genuinely brought me fulfillment and happiness. And when I looked at things like working on music, spending time with loved ones, even if I was spending time with loved ones, if work was still the main thing in my head, it meant that I wasn't really connecting with them because I couldn't disconnect from work. And I guess that really put things into perspective for me in terms of what I truly want to focus on in life. And that really comes from, wanting to have your own definition of the quality of your life.
I love the fact that you center on the concepts of reevaluating or evaluating and definition, right? You just talked about defining what is quality, what is good, what feels good to you and for you. And I think that's really the key message that I personally want to share today in the context of this topic of quality of life, right? So you said it so well earlier, a moment ago, about how, right, for some reason I defined quality of life as the title that I would be promoted to or the income level I would be at. Yet it's sort of contrary, right? Or it's not the whole picture at best, right? So it's sort of like once you got to that title, if, like you said, we didn't honor our true selves with those other things that nourished our souls, right? Be it music, cooking, friendships, time with loved ones, then it's all in vain. Yet we do get caught up, and I think you're right. Like, you know, the Western cultures, especially like in America, um, there is that merit badge of you always just got to be making money, you got to be productive, you got to be revenue generating, you got to be winning, you got to be right, climbing all the time. And i'm going to I'm going to guess that happiness probably does not rank very high in this country, right? Even pre-COVID, right? And I would also, I'm going to just qualitatively suggest based on, let me rephrase, I'm going to suggest based on qualitative research and observations of my own, that most people, you know, they want those extra things, be it a promotion, extra income, right? The fancy office, whatever. It's actually coming from a place of fear, right? It's not a true, like, I'm here to play to win, to achieve that thing that really makes my heart sing. I'm not saying that's true for everyone, yet I'm going to suggest based on, you know, just social media conversations, attitudes I've witnessed, behaviors I've seen, that it comes from a place of fear that if I don't have that, then it would mean demise. It would mean less. It would mean failure, right? And I don't see quality being the predominant right notion amongst those concepts that come from a place of lack, right? There's no right, or seemingly you might take a vacation because you have the money, disposable income to do so, yet if you're sitting on the beach or on a sailboat just reading your emails, worrying about how you might be fired if you didn't show up for that thing, I that's a double waste. In the sense of, right, double waste of you, right, not enjoying the beach, double waste of you taking that PTO. You might as well just be at work, like, right, waste of that money spent, right, waste of space, even like your family is probably all looking at you going like, is this the version that we're gonna get? Like, you know, literally we only get the leftovers from this person who says they care and love us.
No, absolutely. And I think, you know, just to, I guess, take a slight sidestep, I do want to say that the whole idea about money not buying happiness, I still disagree with that, because with the structure of our society, a certain level of monetary security is just needed to be able to be um, stable. And a lot of unhappiness comes from that worry of, you know, how will I pay rent, how will I feed myself and my family, etc. But I read a really interesting research around quality of life about a year or two ago, where it said that based on this research and the, I guess, sort of different elements that come into play when quality of life is researched, our quality plateaus around the $75,000 mark per year. Before that, it keeps going up, but around there, it just goes, right, it doesn't really keep going up. So, and I know that 75 grand is way over the average salary. But if you then compare that to people that are basically just gold hoarding dragons trying to raise the amount that they earn, and some of those have been known to, you know, spout out stuff like, oh, you know, in order to get to this point, you need to be working 20 hours a day, you need to be working this, you can't leave the office, you gotta live out of your car, or this or that. And I read that and I think, considering that you own more money than a person could really spend in a lifetime, like, is this really success? Is this really what you search for in life? And that's I guess the disconnect that I feel, this narrative of like, you know, Netflix is the villain because you spend time watching Good Girls but not reading a book by Tony Robbins. Like, cool, tell me more. It just it doesn't resonate with me, because for me the idea of success is not falling asleep by my desk because I've worked so hard that I've earned a little bit of a snooze on top of like earning reports. My
Mhm.
idea of success is having some free time.
Well, you know what you just said is so powerful in that you've thought about what success is to you and should look to you, right? I'm going to say that I didn't really come to that conclusion about 2 years until about 2 years ago, right? So for me, I was taught that one-sided version of success, which was climb as fast as you can, grab as much as you can in terms of money and titles and right all the accomplishments and accolades, right? It was always it is hoarding, right? It is from a place of fear and lack in that it was like, well, if you don't get it, somebody else will. Yet, right, I didn't wake up to that, right? It was just what I was taught, and it was then perpetuated and reinforced even in the sales roles that I took on, right? It was about the hustle. It was about you got to get it before someone else does. You got to, right, grab that last spot in the president's club or else somebody else will, right? It was always about grabbing for more, reaching for more. Yet at some point, like you said, right, like I reach a level of financial freedom and success. Then it was like, so you are right in that happiness and money, they can go together, and they do amplify, I think, each other. Cause, and effect still to be determined. Yet there's a correlation. I agree with that. Yeah, at some point where I go, well, I've amassed this kind of, right, financial status that I set out to reach. Yet I looked around, I'm like, well, I haven't been home consistently for 4 years. Like, my neighbors didn't know who I was. Like, I didn't, I didn't see friends. I barely saw Luke at home, right? And then I go like, what's all this for then? And yet, right, it did take me stepping back and doing that reevaluation and decision making that you talked about. And that's why I really want people to think about coming out of this conversation today. Not to say that they have to have the answers right away, yet just to go, what is success? What is that quality of life that I would feel really good about? And what is that path, or like what are those sensations and feelings that I want to get to every day? And it's really rooted in this notion that my friend Marika has often reminded me of is, right, we I think in America have been trained to be human doings, right? People
Mm,
talk about your achievements, but not about you as a being, right?
yeah.
Like, we are at the end of the day, first and foremost, human beings. Yet we have somehow shifted that focus to being human doings. And the quality of life somewhere along the way became defined as the shit you're able to get done.
Yeah.
And
Like,
I'll say one more thing really quickly. I was actually really offended when somebody said something like, Sylvia, every time I think of you, I just think of like a woman who gets shit done. And I was devastated because I go, is that all I am? Because you could literally insert any other name with my name, right? Or a robot. You can literally go, hey, bot, get shit done. I was like, oh my God, like, and I know they meant it well. However, to me, it was like, that's a huge wake up call. If that is all I'm known for, crap.
no, I get what you mean, but I think um, a lot of people have actually had this sort of wake up call. And I guess, we have to address this. It's what's going on around the world during the pandemic. People have been forced to sort of face that. What is the quality of life they're looking for? And I think the monetary gap within quality of life became extremely clear through, especially if you look at the media early on in the pandemic. I remember there was this, I think it was a UK media site, I can't remember which one, was saying like ways to basically keep sane in the pandemic. And one of it was like, when you get tired of one of your rooms, just sleep in another one so you feel like you're in a hotel room, or, to change your surroundings. Spend some time in your yard, cook in a different area of your, like, they kept making up these ideas where it was very clear that they were not aimed at the, single mom of three kids living in a two-bedroom apartment in, an apartment building with no access to an outside area.
Right. Right.
the the amount of times when I see that as well from the point of view of, improving people's quality of life by teaching them that they can get rid of their student debts. And there's like,
Mm,
look at this, 25-year-old girl who managed to wipe her student debts. If she could do it, so can you. And then you
mm,
read the fine print, and it's like her parents run a big organization that gave her a well-paying job. Her grandma gave her a house that she rents
yeah.
out on
Yep.
Airbnb for
Yep.
extra money.
Yep. Yep.
Her and her boyfriend lived in their parents' houses with free access to food and like
Mm,
everything. And this person gave them a car, and it's like you're talking about a quality of life that's already blocked for like a
right.
large percentage of people. And I think um, that's where, I guess, to tie it back in with that self-awareness,
Hmm.
self-awareness and the sort of societal or cultural awareness is needed so that we can start challenging some of these ideas around happiness, quality of life, success, so that it's not such a singular point of view or singular perspective that's being presented.
So I have an interesting story to further that idea. So I posit that, um, a lot of us think of quality of life as some sense of entitlement to
Mm,
some things. And I'm going to share a story that I think illustrate this point. So, um, one of my parents had always come from a place of lack, and it was always about what she didn't have, noticing not just what she didn't have, but how others would have, and amplifying that gap, right, between someone else and her, and never really looking at the reality, like you said, right? Those realities. So, for instance, so she used to famously or infamously, I'm not sure which at this point, complain about how she didn't have a 401k account because, well, let me state the facts first. So, she never worked. So,
mm,
obviously, if you don't have an employer, you wouldn't have an employer sponsor 401k account. And also, my dad had set up other things for savings, right? So for a number of reasons, one of which being he's his own employer, so he owned his own business, and so there were a number of things that, like, my dad had figured out. Yet she had this idea that she was entitled to a very well padded 401k account without really, right, like, again, assessing the reality, looking at the facts, or understanding what that was meant for, right? What is the 401k for? Right? Go there, like, what is that outcome supposed to be? And if there are other means to get to that end, we're good, right? Which is exactly where she was and is. Anyway, but so she would literally go around telling people how, right, she wasn't being given a 401k. So
God.
she then deemed her, literally, she would say something like, my quality of life is impacted because my 401k account was not being padded. And you're like, yet, I know this is a bit of a, an extreme example, and a little bit of a, I think a little bit of a satire from my end, or, some sort of commentary here about her mindset and behavior. Yet the point being is she didn't even understand why she needed that thing, right?
Mm,
He just went around saying that that's what I was told was good, right? Or security meant this, or comfort came from those three numbers in that letter, with
yeah.
no or little understanding of what is the outcome, or how to achieve it, or what this thing even technically was or wasn't. And I feel like there, at least I fell into the trap, not with a 401k, but like you talked about earlier, a C-level title.
Yeah.
I went around telling people I want to be a CSO, a chief sales officer. Then one day someone was like, why, Sylvia? It's not that you can't do it, but why do you want it? And my answer was, I don't know why. I was just taught that. I just repeated, I regurgitated it, right? And I
Yeah.
would say something like, oh, that guy or gal, I don't know how they got there. Like, they got there by luck, sheer luck. I mean, like, literally, I saw somebody 1 year younger than I get to that status, right, before I did.
Mm,
And I was like, you know? And that's what sparked the whole conversation was like, all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, like, why am I so envious for something that I didn't even understand why I desired?
Hmm. Well, but I think, to take a slight sidestep again away from the topic of money, I think there are so many other parts of our, I guess, society and social structures that come in quite similar flavors. Like, like for example, I was reading this article from someone who said that their first serious romantic relationship came late in their 20s, and they were writing this. It was sort of an open letter, and they were talking about how they'd felt shamed from the age of about 11 or 12 for not having had any relationships. And I was a little bit shocked at
Yeah.
the low age that they're talking about, but
Mm.
I started discussing this with my wife, and we started thinking how often, um, when people meet kids that are like 6, 7 years old, and we were watching a cooking show where people were cooking with kids, and one of the first questions that they would very often ask these like 6, 7, 8-year-old kids would be, "Do you have a boyfriend at school? Do you have a crush on someone?" And even though I know it comes from a good place, and they're just trying to,
Yeah.
I don't really know. I guess embarrass the kids because like I
Or
can't
be
imagine kids.
jestful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
but it does normalize a certain I guess checklist of things that like, oh, are you doing well at school? Do you have a significant other at age like 6 or 7? Where obviously it it shouldn't be needed to be like fulfilled in life at no matter what age. Um, and I say this as someone who's been in a relationship for about half my life, but at the same time, like you need to be, you know, cool with yourself first and foremost. And um, if you were to ask someone, why do you desperately want to get into a relationship? I think a lot of people would have similar responses as you did with the CSO. Don't
Mhm.
know. It's just what you should do. It's what you should have. You should
Mhm.
have kids. You should have a family. You should own a house. You should, take a vacation to a beach somewhere and sit in the sun for
Mhm.
amounts of time.
Yeah, actually, I love the story you just shared with us, right? And I actually posit that for females in particular, this is a big issue in that, right? So this woman now writing about how she had felt a sense of failure for not being in a relationship from the age of 11 or 12. I actually posit that she's coming from a place of feeling undesired.
Mm,
So, right? So the quality of life in this case for her was dependent on someone finding her desirable.
yeah,
That's a really tough life to live, which is
yeah,
in a way what a lot of us in corporates, had corporate jobs had sought at one point or another, right? That recognition, right? That
oh, yeah,
tap, right? To that next level, that pat on the back, that right thumbs up, that all those outward extrinsic things. So it's sort of like, and I hadn't even thought of this until you share the story that trigger all these other thoughts that are just now formulating in my mind. In that my quality of life, or my path to that quality of life, was not only defined in my case by someone else, it was determined by someone else. And no
yeah,
wonder why, right? There were times when I would say things, right, in my 15-year corporate journey. I would say things like, I don't feel truthful to myself, or I would say something like, I feel like I'm living someone else's agenda, or I wake up and be like, that was so crushing and I don't even know why, right? But it was because all of a sudden it's like, well, if this woman had from the age of 11 or 12 been told that she was not full or whole until someone else found her desirable, um talk about loss of control, right?
yeah,
Talk about, I mean, denying of self, right? Or just some sort of shame around that when it didn't happen, when it was not given, versus going, like you said, right? Like, what are those things that, like, at the age of 11 or 12, like, she could have done to work on that inner part? Not that to say that she didn't. I don't know who this person
no,
is,
yeah,
and she might have, right? I don't know that. Yet that shame coming from, um, I don't even want to say shame. It's sort of that sense of incompletion, right?
yeah,
That that was taught to her, that until some guy or gal or whatever she prefers found her desirable, she was not desirable, which you and I both know it's false. It's false to,
Yeah.
and it's a limiting belief, by the way.
Yeah, and it's tough. It's tough though when you lack that perspective, because it is really easy to fall into that place when you're like, let's say if you are 13, 14, you're in high school, and if you're the last person in your group of friends that isn't in a relationship, like as an example, like it if you're in your 30s now and looking at that, you might think, oh, it's high school, none of those relationships will last anywhere or something. It's easy to kind of look at it as a throwaway, but at that time, that's your life.
Mm. True,
um,
true.
so
I don't
and I,
dismiss that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I feel like, that's the hard part, right? And I think that is the message here, in that a lot of us, at least I'm gonna speak for myself, right? I don't always tell the truth about what I want,
mm,
for fear of judgment, right? So I recently started pursuing this other aspect of my life that I kept under wraps for a really long time. So it's nothing shameful. It's, I want to be in the food business. Yet I did not speak about that, and didn't do anything about it until really the quarantine started. And it started only because I wanted to feed myself and Luke and just
yeah,
have fun in the process. But I really didn't lean into that because of, right, all the judgment, or people would tell these negative stories like, oh, you would never make money, you would be married to the restaurant, you would have no life. Yet I go, if I want to cook all day, and that to me would be awesome or thrilling or true to me, how is that not quality? Yet
yeah,
I kept letting other people's definition of quality get to me and prevent me from pursuing something that would, and has brought me a lot of joy. So I just look at it as going, like, I think a lot of us, and I really want to encourage everybody listening, even if you've done the inner work, to even now go, in the midst of all the changes that we've experienced, to kind of go, what is that joy? Or how do I get to that joy? Or what is joyful to me? Or what is quality? What is success? What is happiness? And is that really my narrative? Is that really a choice that I have consciously made? Or what's here, right? Because we a lot of times speak to each other at superficial levels, right?
mm,
Yet if you really dug deeper, you're going to find out, actually, you know what? I have a dream to be a tennis star, and I'm going to start with signing up for one clinic.
yeah. Oh yeah, and it's
That,
the same with my I've played music such a huge part of my life, and I know we've talked about this in terms of realizing once you're slightly further away from it, how you're just drawn back to it, and you just want to get back
yeah.
into whatever gives you that passion. And it's about prioritization, and I feel like this is the perfect way to introduce next week's topic, because it's so easy to look back at life and regret what you haven't done. But in reality, you could put a lot of energy into regretting it that could much better be spent at just getting started. Because like I could sit here now and think, oh, why haven't I been recording my music? Why did I spend money on this rather than that? Why did I not post videos of me playing there or this? I can't change that now. So rather than regret, going to
Mhm.
move forward, going to do more of it. But regret is such an interesting topic, because some people say, it's easier to regret things that you have done than haven't, would rather do whatever, but that has to have a limit. Yet it's something that I've kind of taken with me through life. I'll fully admit I've often said that line of like, I'd rather regret something I've done than what I haven't, because I'd rather go through that and do stuff rather than look back and think, what if? But it's something that ties into a lot of what we've talked about. It ties into those patterns. It ties into that quality of life. So I'm really excited to see how where our sort of free form discussion leads us when we start diving down that rabbit hole.
Agreed. Same here. Looking forward to it, my friend.